Everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Bantamweight Boxing Podcast. Pound for pound, the best boxing podcast around. And join with me as ever are my three brothers. Say hello, everyone.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, how are we doing?
Jim did it for us.
Jim did it for us, yeah, right. So let's get into it. So as you know, how we like to do this podcast is we'll start off with the headlines and then move into the group discussion. This episode is going to be slightly different from some other ones because we thought we've done 5 episodes. We're on to our 6th. Let's do a kind of special episode where we dive into one boxer on their own, specifically looking today at Tyson Fury. So we'll get the headlines done. There's only one Tyson Fury, and then we'll get into all about Tyson Fury, just looking at some pointers, some questions about his career, and so on, potential fights or whatever. So the first headline, looking at Eddie Hearn, and he's announced his first fight dates for the return of Matchroom Boxing. Starting from August the 1st, there will be a fight card every week for 4 weeks. Get in. Finally, boxing is back, but the biggest card is on the 22nd of August, and it's White versus Povetkin. And we only give a shit about anyone above middleweight. So let's get into it. Jim, what do you think of this fight? How does this fight go down for you?
Hold on, I just need a bib before I start talking because my mouth is salivating at the prospect of those two heavyweights getting it on. Really interesting fight, 2 big hitters, both with very good records. But my money would be on the younger fighter, the more dangerous fighter, and Dillian Whyte. If I was a betting man, that's where my money would be going.
Yeah, for sure. It does seem as though, Povetkin is coming towards the end of his career. I think he's about 42 now, may even be a bit older than that.
Oh, man.
And
he looks about 12.
He looks about 12. Yeah, he's a baby-faced assassin, though.
Yeah.
But he still carries the punching power. So it's still,
I wouldn't say it to his face. Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it to his face. And we've seen him, what was his last fight? I think it was Michael Hunter, and that was actually still quite a competitive fight. So
that was a great fight.
He's still got it.
Yeah, it was a really good fight.
You expect White to win that?
Yeah, I heard Dillian Whyte say something, and he was like, for Povetkin, this is the ultimate, this is a bit of a turning point for him now. If he loses this, he just becomes another old name that sort of loses to the up-and-coming guys. But if he sort of wins this, he's right back in there amongst...
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if
Povetkin's a great fighter to gauge your true potential because the only chaps that have actually beaten him are Klitschko and AJ. So
yeah, the elite.
He's a he's a gatekeeper, isn't he, of like the heavyweight champions. If you can beat this guy, you are on the road to greatnett.
Yeah, for sure. And we all know
on the road to greatness. I've only got one word to say.
Dillian Whyte is definitely on that road.
Yeah, the wolf.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, the can man, the wolf, the man with so many nicknames. But anyway, let's move on to the next headline. And it's Luke Campbell versus Ryan Garcia has been called by the WBC for the interim lightweight belt. What a fight this is, Joe. How does it go down? Well,
I might have to borrow Jimmy's bib, mate. I know we said we don't care about anyone below middleweight, but can we make an exception for this one? This is a top fight. Also think the winner of this gets David Haney, I believe. So
yeah, I think so.
That sort of adds to it. But no, it's a very interesting one. Both big men for lightweights, standing at about 5'10", 5'9". Obviously, Campbell's come off the back of the Lomachenko loss, but he roughed him up and he done all right. I suspect he'll do the same in the Garcia fight. Like what Jimmy was saying about the gatekeeper, this is also a good test for Garcia. We've never really seen him in there with someone dangerous or someone with really a credible record. So it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. I think the only thing I'm concerned about is whether or not he will actually take this fight because I think DAZN offered him about 200 grand before to fight someone else and he pulled out because the money wasn't right. So he is a bit of a prima donna, a bit of a diva. So with that in mind, I can see it not going ahead. Sorry to put a negative tone on it, but
yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see if it'll be interesting to see if Golden Boy does let his fighter in with someone as dangerous as Luke Campbell. Someone I've mentioned before is criminally underrated. Like, he's such a great fighter.
Yeah.
And I think he's got the experience. He's a far better fight. Well, not far better fight, but I think he beats Ryan Garcia.
Yeah, well, we're yet to see the best of Garcia, so that's why it's so interesting. Tough to predict because we really don't know. Don't know what this guy's about. I mean, his highlight reel's brilliant. He's got the hand speed, the power, it looks. But yeah, Campbell's no joke. So it will be very, very interesting to see. My money would be on Campbell, though. I think.
Okay, well, let's move on to our third and final headline. And now we're looking at Billy Joe Saunders has once again, he's considering retiring from boxing. The WBO 168 pound belt holder is upset about his friend Daniel Kinahan basically being removed from boxing, no longer being part of his promotion. And he's saying that he's not planning on staying around boxing for much longer. So over to you, Jörn. What do you think?
Wait till he's got his next mortgage payment, Mike. That's all.
Yeah, well, this is it. This is it.
I don't think you pay mortgages on caravans, Jim.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But Jörn,
I'm not even going to go there.
if this is true,
if Jörn is coming across quite frightened, he's received a lot of hate mail from the first two podcasts, and I believe there's actually a bounty on his head. So this podcast is live from
from my bunker.
Yeah. Undisclosed location in Russia.
Yeah. Well, look, this is no holds barred, right? You know, for me, Billy Joe Saunders, like a fat Marlon Brando, sat on a swing saying he could have been a contender. What the fuck happened to someone with so much promise? He could have shook up the world, right? The Tyson Fury for little people that never was. Every fucking fight that I thought I was going to see him in never happened. And neither will the Callum Smith, because he'll probably be on remand or make some YouTube video spitting at prostitutes, basically.
Yeah, he's had some questionable moments.
Yeah, no, completely.
Sure.
I mean, we've seen his potential, but we're not seeing enough of the dazzling nights like the Lemieux fight, or enough wars where he's grizzled through. I don't know to blame, but
a lot was made of the Lemieux fight, and it's only so long that win can kind of take you, isn't it? And after a while, you're like, all right, well, what have you done for me lately? And with Billy Joe Saunders, it's been pretty downhill.
He threw that chicken at Wilder in Nando's.
That was a highlight. That was definitely a highlight of the career for sure.
To be fair, that is one of the bravest things I've ever seen.
You've got to have some bottle.
Yeah.
But that's the whole problem, because we all know that he's got tremendous bottle, tremendous talent. But eventually he'll be overlooked and forgotten without having had memorable nights of fighters of half of his caliber. So I'm just very disappointed.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I think that Callum Smith fight would be a great one if the Canelo one didn't go through, but it's highly unlikely we're going to see that fight.
Yeah, but it's like the Triple G one before, and etc.
Yeah. You know, we've seen so many
goes on and on
of Saunders going to these press conferences, giving it to the Canelo, giving it to Triple G. I want you.
Yeah.
And now finally it's on a plate for you, and you want nothing to do with it. But we'll see what happens with that. But that's enough for all the news headlines this week. Let's move into the main discussion. And this week we are obviously talking all about Tyson Fury. So I've got a few questions, few pointers. And the first thing we're going to start off is going to be to everyone. And I'm going to set a scenario for all you guys and all you listeners. We're at the bantamweight boxing promotions. Yes, it's finally happened. Years after the podcast has started, we're finally into the promoting business, and we're in charge of Tyson Fury and the rest of his career. He's got 4 fights left, and that's not including his next Wilder fight. And each one of us has got an opportunity to say who we would like Tyson to fight next after each other. So I'm going to start with the first fight after Wilder. Then we're going to move to Jim, and then Johan, and then Joe will say Tyson Fury's final fight. So I'm going to kick it off. And for me, I'm assuming, obviously, and I think we all are, that Tyson Fury is going to beat Wilder in this trilogy fight. And then I want to put him up against Dillian Whyte in a big clash for that WBC belt and finally find out who is the real WBC champ. After all the time Whyte's been waiting for it, I think it's only fair. And I just think it would be a great fight. I've seen already on social media the beef between those two. They're going at it, and they've properly pissed each other off. Like, they're going crazy on Twitter, shouting at each other, saying whatever. So I think for the press conference alone between those two characters,
completely.
The Wolf and the Gypsy, it would be just something incredible. Incredible.
Sounds like a film.
Yeah, the wolf and the gypsy.
Yeah.
But then also as well, moving into the actual fight itself, I think if White can get into Fury's head enough or whatever, he can maybe draw Fury into a bit of a scrap.
Yeah,
I think that could be quite interesting. But I think ultimately how I'd see that fight going is, White is an all or nothing kind of guy, isn't he? And he would give 100% and try and draw Fury into the fight. I think Fury technically is probably just a bit too good for White. And I think I would actually predict, unlike many, probably Tyson Fury to knock him out or TKO him probably later in the fight. Because I think White would just give 110% and then round 10 or whatever would probably start to gas out a little bit. And then I think Fury, his boxing ability would take over and probably beat White.
Yeah.
But that would be my first fight for Tyson Fury. And then so obviously he's got to win. So on to the next one. Jim. Where does Tyson Fury go for you now?
If he defeated White, there is only one clash to be made, in my opinion, and that has got to be with the other British superstar heavyweight champion, Anthony Joshua. And really, it is two massive names, not just in British boxing, but British sport, colliding to unify the heavyweight division. A fascinating fight. I think, again, I would probably tip the scales in Tyson Fury's favour. But I think AJ probably has a better track record of keeping himself in shape. And I think that could give him a slight advantage. I think also the other advantage, and we've spoken about this before on the podcast, is AJ, for the first time really in his career, he goes into a fight where he is the underdog, and removing that pressure may just free him up a bit. He was very stiff in his last fight against Ruiz, and you could feel the expectation and pressure on him. And I just think against Fury, he might surprise a few people. Fury's been caught a number of times in his career. He is no doubt the better boxer, but when you're in that heavyweight division, it's just one punch, baby. And that is me.
Nice. Have we lost Mike? Mike.
Hello?
Mike's busy trying to make that fight.
Yeah.
I've just sold it so much that Mike is on the fucking phone to Eddie Hearn.
Hello?
He's got Ed Warren. He's got Frank Warren on one line. He's got Eddie Hearn on the other. He's making it happen.
Yeah, Mike, I think we can hear you.
Hello?
Mike, Mike, you back? Because we'll just take this fucking podcast over, mate. You've been holding us back for way too long.
Who's number 3? Who's going third?
Go on, Johan. It's all you, mate.
Is it me? I'm gonna add a little bit of comedy into it. I'm gonna go for Fury v Chisora 3. I'm gonna mix it up and throw another smaller
The
fella.
trilogy we've all been waiting for.
Yeah, but like I said, I'm gonna throw another smaller fella into the mix, maybe Andy Ruiz. Fury would have to battle them at the same time, like the T-Rex v Velociraptors in Jurassic Park, or I'd have someone slick like Billy Joe Saunders on Tyson Fury's shoulders, fighting someone heavy-fisted like Povetkin or Takam on AJ's shoulders. Some kind of combination like that. A real freak show. And I think aside from that, I think the only other fight I want to see is the one that Joe is going to talk about, really. Every other fight, I mean, we've covered it, haven't we? We've talked about the top.
So I was going to say, 4 years down the line after that freak show, what Daniel Dubois is the name that sprung to my mind. He's 22 now, will be 26. Fury will be 35. It's the perfect sort of, passing the torch on. I'd love to see that. Dubois has got a lot of potential, big hitter. And the only other thing I was thinking, how about we finally, settle the beef with David Price? If he's not too busy in the plumbing industry or whatever he's doing now, get him back and find your big stiff idiot. Get them two in there. I think that, settle the beef.
But the thing with Dubois is he's the only fighter that Big John Fury has said could challenge his son.
Oh, really?
In the years. Yeah, he's the only fighter because although he has also said that no man born could beat him.
Yeah, Dubois does speak like he was made in a lab, to be fair.
True.
That's a great fight coming up, isn't it, Dubois?
Yeah, as
Joe
long as it doesn't
Joyce.
happen too soon. Oh,
Yeah.
Joe Joyce, right?
Joe Joyce, seek and destroy. A lot of effort went into the marketing of that fight.
Yeah, no, that is a good one. For Fury, the only other name I'm thinking is Usyk. We'll see how he fares in the heavyweight division.
That's an interesting fight, that one.
You just added a little bit of spice to that, Joe.
Yeah, I didn't throw that in there.
Yeah, the Usyk one is an interesting one to see if Usyk can do it with the big boys. It's against Fury, he can really prove that. So that would be a great fight.
We'll have to see some more fights with him at heavyweight before you could even
true.
consider that fight.
Also, you got to consider what state Tyson Fury is going to be in 4 years. I mean, look at him, the difference in 2 years and how he is now. I mean, he could be a binman. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's move on from that topic. We've discussed what we think or what we'd hope Fury's career to hold, but let's move on to something else now. So, a specific question to you, Johan. How do we beat Tyson Fury? I think we've spoken about this a little bit before.
The Velociraptor.
Yeah,
exactly.
Do you need more than one man in the ring to beat him?
How do you beat by being a drugs cheat or loading your wraps? I mean, take a measuring tape, go to the wall, and mark. What is it? 6'7"? Jim,
9,
you'll need a stool. How could you knock out a monster built like that? I don't think any of the current contenders beat him.
Yeah. So the next part I was going to ask is if you had kind of a game plan, who do you think would be best to employ that?
Wallen seemed to be the best person. I mean, like I said before, I think you make it ugly from the press conference to the post-fight interview. And I think when you were talking about the Dillian White fight, I was thinking to myself, the edge that Dillian White now has is that he's taken over as like the unacceptable face of boxing. He's happy to go to places that Fury can't go to anymore.
Yeah,
because the press killed the first Fury. They killed the first Fury. I mean, we talked about comebacks last week, and I think we might touch on it again in this podcast. But really, the real comeback was from what the press did to him. You know, they took Fury apart. So I think that Dillian White, I think Fury has lost a bit of an edge through that, and I think Dillian White still has that, and as part of that tactic of making it ugly. You know, that's what needs to happen. Getting close and dirty like an Andy Ruiz, open up his eye like a Wallin. I mean, Klitschko's jab didn't work. Wilder's power didn't work. You need the poise of Lennox Lewis, power of George Foreman, and the footwork of Usyk. And I mean, we talked about Usyk a minute ago, and Usyk only has 2 of those things. I mean, I think really it'll be a fighter he doesn't fear or respect that will cause him serious trouble. He has that showman's confidence, and he'll come into the ring one day underprepared and overconfident, maybe at the tail end of his career, and get beaten by someone who couldn't have touched him in his prime.
Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment.
I agree with that. But what I would say, you spoke about the White fight sort of outside of the ring, and I 100% agree. And even with the back and forth on social media, it does seem like White is the only one really to get under Fury's skin. He is starting to, to fight.
He can go to places that Fury can't go to anymore.
Yeah. But also inside of the ring, I haven't really seen an opponent take it to Fury and work the body and get, obviously Wallin got in there and got rough and tough. But I think White, he said it himself in a Sky Sports interview, he might be the man to definitely cause him a few problems.
I think I'm more confident of him causing problems than I am of AJ at the minute.
Oh, 100%. I think the White fight is harder for Fury than the AJ one.
Yeah.
I probably agree with that. It's a funny one because everyone is talking AJ Fury, but I think in terms of what I've seen over the social media, like White just doesn't give a shit. Like the things he was saying the other day, what was it? He was saying, "I remember knocking you down in sparring and you were crying on the floor," and then like Fury has to come back because obviously he's the ambassador for mental health and can't say anything. For saying this press thing, and then he comes back and he's like, "I can't believe you said that about me. I gave you a chance when no one else."
Yeah, he even showed the text that he sent to him after he lost and sent him all these emotional texts and all sorts.
Showed a side to Fury that had actually been quite hurt. And I think White could be quite a dangerous guy. And if we're talking about the rough and tumble.
Well, styles make fights. That's what you got to remember.
And also, White's got nothing to lose. The man has got nothing to lose. Yeah. He's been constantly, blocked from that title shot. So he's not playing by the rules. He's got no fucking Under Armour boxers that he needs to sell like AJ. So he can go below the belt and entice Fury to take the bait and provoke him.
But this is why he doesn't get the shot because of the type of person that he is. He's not as sellable, is he, as people that that will say the right things and won't say the wrong ones.
Yeah. Well, that's why I prefer him, though.
I think what he needs to do, if Dillian White is listening to this, you need to sack Eddie Hearn and give me a fucking call, right?
Bantamweight boxing promotions, baby. We've got Fury on a 4 deal.
It's as simple as that, mate. It's as simple as that. Step out of AJ's shadow. Step out of AJ's shadow. You know, we will guide you, mate. We'll guide you to the fucking very top.
Before Jimmy sends all my listeners his CV, let's move on to the next question, and let's keep it Tyson Fury, because we do love Dillian White, and we're going to have to give him his own. We're going to have to give him his own episode, and hopefully one day we can even get him on the pod. But let's move on to my next question. And Joe, this is coming towards you. What do you make of Fury's constant changes in coaches? So we've seen this a few times now with what's his name? The guy he had last
Ben Davison.
Sorry. And then also he's recently split with the trainer he had for the second Wilder fight. So and with his own, was it his uncle who was coaching before?
Well, so I think his dad. Here. Yeah, well, he was coached by his dad until his dad gorged someo's eye out and got sent to prison, I believe, in about 2012. So
so maybe that's not his fault too.
No, but you see that.
Just going back to Dillian White. I want Dillian White to know I would fucking gouge someone's eye out for him.
He don't need anyone to do that for him.
I don't think he does.
All right, let's move on from the Dillian White love fest.
It's easy to sort of say, he constantly changes his trainers and sort of attribute that to a personality that's hard to manage like Fury's, because he's a bit of a maverick. But I actually think certainly with the Ben Davison and the whole that whole transition, a lot to do with it was his dad, John Fury, not gouging eyes out, but he sort of has always said he doesn't want Tyson Fury at 18 stone or anything under. And that was what he was at in the Wallin fight. John Fury sort of persists that he has to be bigger, so he's got more punching power. Davison, the job that he done was to get him in shape. And he done that. He lost however many stone and really dug him out of a deep hole that he was in and got him in the ring with Wilder. But in terms of technical ability, I don't think he could learn much from Ben Davison, and I think that's why John Fury wanted him to go back to Stewart, obviously the nephew of Emmanuel Stewart, the great. That for me, there's a lot of complexities, and it's easy to say that he's a maverick, he's hard to manage, but I think a lot of the training, jumping about, has come from him wanting to adapt his style. You see the difference between the first Wilder fight and the second one. He danced around in the first one, looked fit as a fiddle, but not as fit, he was still overweight or whatever. But in the second one, he changed the game plan and he thought, I'm going to knock this guy out. And Sugar Hill Stewart was the man to guide him through that, and that's exactly what happened. In 2010, Manny Stewart flew Tyson Fury out to California or somewhere in the States, and Andy Lee was there, and that's how we got to know him. So I think the most recent change was born out of Tyson wanting to sort of roll back the years and reunite with someone who was quite close to him and could teach him a lot about the sport.
Yeah, I agree, Joe. His record, you can't criticize him changing trainers when you look at his record, I
was going to ask to you, Joe, do you think being a coach for Tyson Fury is more of being almost a moral coach? Not a moral coach, probably the wrong word, but being someone who keeps him on his right side and keeps him mentally in the right place.
Yeah, I think there's certainly an element of needing to manage him. Davison, like I said, he was a fitness coach, I believe. Obviously helped him with the slips and all of the nice techie sort of stuff. But there definitely are layers. I think Stewart's there for the technical ability. You need someone like who I think his dad is doing now, sort of keeping him in line and making sure he's not going off and doing the wrong thing. But ultimately, the one person, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. The one man that's got to keep him in line is himself, and he seems to be on the right track to doing that.
All right, yeah, that's a fair response. And let's move on to our next one. So, looking more at Tyson Fury as a fighter, Jim, is he the best current British fighter right now? Surely he's got to be up there, if not number one.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think, based on his last performance, there's no British fighter that can really claim that title based on his last performance against Deontay Wilder. The manner of that victory in foreign territory, capturing the WBC World Heavyweight title in the manner that he did it, it's one of the greatest British victories, and I don't think many would be able to dispute his labeling him as the greatest British fighter currently.
I think the only person that comes close is probably AJ, to be fair.
Yeah, and I think if barring AJ's last two fights, I think it would be a far more compelling debate. But because of AJ's most recent performances compared to Tyson's going on form, right here, right now, I think there's only one winner.
Yeah. And if he beats AJ, if he beats all the fights, the kind of the ones that we've listed earlier and stuff like that, could he go down as one of the greatest British fighters of all time? Do you know what I mean?
All time, baby. All time.
Of all time. Is he the GOAT? Is he the GOAT, man?
He's the GOAT.
He's the British GOAT.
He's the British GOAT. It's not the greatest award in regards to boxing, but he definitely he could go down as definitely one of the greatest British.
I think the only thing that's going to defeat Tyson Fury is Tyson Fury. I think if he can stay in the right frame of mind, keep himself fit.
But Tyson Fury is born of his mother, so I don't know if he can.
Yeah. Destiny is in his own hands. He's got the ability.
I agree.
And let's not forget Lennox Lewis in that mix though.
Yeah.
True.
But don't you worry, mate. We'll get onto Lennox Lewis fairly soon. Jumping the gun a little bit there, Jan. But going on what Jimmy was just saying there about his biggest kind of enemy or whatever you want to call it is himself. Does that link back then almost to the trainers and how important him having that coach is to keep him in the right frame of mind? It does kind of point to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think also with Tyson Fury is he, if he retired now, he would go down as a great British fighter. But I think if he retired today, I would definitely say Lennox would be. So I think to fulfill his legacy, he's got to go on and beat AJ and possibly White and Usyk. And I think he probably feels now he is at the peak. He's just produced the performance of a lifetime, and now he's got some amazing fights lined up. And as long as he's still got the desire, I think he's going to reach the pinnacle. But it's fascinating to see what's going to happen over the next couple of years with Tyson Fury in that heavyweight division.
Keeping on the topic of Lennox Lewis, over to you, Johan. If there was a fantasy fight, and as boxing fans, we love to chat shit about this, about if he was alive then and they fought at the same time or whatever.
Jesus v. Muhammad, who wins?
I'm going to chat shit right now. I mean, I reckon...
if Lennox Lewis versus Tyson Fury was to happen, both in their primes.
Fantasy fights, I reckon Lewis would win even if they fought right now. Let alone in his prime. Lewis just feels invincible to me. I think that's because he defeated my childhood hero, Iron Mike, and ended him with.
You're going to say Frank Bruno?
Frank who? He's forgotten about
him. And ended him with a punch. That punch that just seared itself into my memory. If you ask Lewis, with his supreme confidence, he'd say he'd win, and I think you'd need his supreme confidence to overcome the mind games and have the right mindset to win. In his prime under Manny Stewart, I think Lewis would find a way to win, even if it took him more than one fight. The Vitaly Klitschko fight shows he could find ways to win even when underprepared and at his worst. But I think really the sum of what Lewis achieved over this is what Jim said, the sum of what Lewis achieved over his career outweighs what Fury has achieved so far. But there's more to come from Fury.
Yeah. No,
and really the effortless way he beat Klitschko, and now Wilder, I mean, he has to be regarded as one of the greatest British champions of all time, heading towards the greatest if he continues in that way.
Definitely. But let's move on to a little bit kind of away from his fighting ability and more onto his character outside the ring, because with Tyson Fury we can't really ignore that. It's such a fundamental part of him as a boxer. And over to you, Jim. Do you think obviously his trash talking and all of that and all his antics outside the ring have a key are very key to his overall performance in the ring? Or do you think he'd be just as good of a fighter if he didn't, and be able to beat people in the way he did, even if he didn't do, taking the mick and the, you're a bum Wilder and all of that, you're a big dosser? What do you make of that?
Look, I think Tyson Fury's persona outside of the ring is for one reason, and that's to sell the fight. He's actually I don't think there's any link between that sort of charismatic, quite provocative, pre-match press conference. That doesn't mean anything when he steps in the ring. I think those two, the character of Tyson Fury in the ring versus him outside of the ring, they're two different animals. He builds that persona quite rightfully to get interest in his fights and build his profile. You could take all the trash talk away and he would still be putting people on their bum. So I don't, and I think also at the elite level of boxing, when you're fighting the caliber of fighters that he is, they are not really affected by those mind games. These guys are supreme athletes. They work, they're in those training camps and their focus is on one thing, and that is victory. And, all the trash talking, look, I hate to spoil it for everyone, but that is just, there's very few genuine rivalries and hatred between fighters. It does happen, but a lot of the time...
You just fucking ruin boxing.
Do you know what, Johan? I think you should watch WWE, mate. That is far more up your street. But yeah, like in answer to your question, Mike, look, if you took all of that away, all the trash talk, Tyson Fury would still be doing what he's doing in the ring now, which is not.
What about Klitschko though, Jim? What about that Klitschko fight?
Yeah,
a lot of people would say.
I think if you took away the Batman costume, he would still be unified world heavyweight champion.
Yeah,
no doubt.
You're probably right.
It may to a certain extent, but again, if you replayed that with no pre-press conferences, what does anyone here think that Klitschko would win?
No.
Bro, yeah, no, I think it's unlikely. No, yeah.
I think.
Right.
I don't think Klitschko would have won, but I don't agree entirely with what you're saying.
Yeah, I get what Jimmy's point is, because he's saying in more regards to Tyson Fury as a fighter, because Tyson Fury is phenomenal, and I don't think there's anyone on his resume, as Jimmy said, if there wasn't a press conference, he wouldn't have beaten. But I think there is still a lot in that trash talking, and I think it does still. You saw the way Vlad looked at Tyson Fury, and he was infuriated in those press conferences. He looked at someone like Tyson Fury and was like, you don't respect the sport of boxing, you don't respect the art. And it was the first time people were looking at Vlad and going, you're nothing to me, you mean nothing to me, you may have beaten all these people, but I'm different, I'm Tyson Fury. And I think that definitely did play a role, and I think the question there is how much can we give to it? But
fuck that cold-blooded Vladimir. If you're telling me that fence between David Haye and Chisora was a fucking show, they get out of here.
Or when they nailed down the tables for Chisora White. Yeah, I don't think that was for WWE effect. No, I thought that was real hatred there. But yeah, no, that's a fair assessment, Jim, and a nice different kind of look into the whole trash talking thing with Tyson Fury. But last week, we actually did a whole episode about comebacks, and we didn't actually mention Tyson Fury, the man. Probably everyone was screaming at the screen, going, "How have you not spoken about this man?" But we saved it for today. And
yes.
Over to you, Johan.
Yeah, me.
What do you make of his comeback?
Rising from the dead has to be rated as one of the greatest comebacks of all time. It's only been done twice before. First by the God of love, Jesus, now by the God of war, the Gypsy King. Bollocks that Wilder isn't a dangerous fighter or wouldn't have been a match for anyone in the 90s. He's lethal to anyone except the most expert. His game is one-dimensional, so he couldn't stand up to Lennox Lewis or Klitschko. And I think he'd lose a boring fight to AJ, with AJ smothering the action, blah, blah, blah. But he's lethal to anyone stepping through the ropes after 2 years out. that murderous right hand, getting up from that moment was the greatest comeback I've witnessed on live TV. Like the birth of my firstborn son kind of moments. That's all, that's all really that you can say about it.
Yeah, there's not much
I mean,
I can say in response to this.
People talk about the whole obesity and mental health and all of that stuff, and I'm sure that's, you know, massive struggle to come back from all of that. But really, just that moment in the fight where he's got knocked down in the 12th round, coming back from that is exceptional, absolutely exceptional.
For sure,
great, one of the greatest things I've seen.
Yeah, definitely. It was like a movie, wasn't it? It was you couldn't have written that. That was something special. But two more questions now, one for Joe and then one for everyone, and then we'll wrap this podcast up. So over to you, Joe. How do you rate Fury's fight adaptation? Because, you know, he's obviously, a lot of the time he's spoken about as this fantastic boxer and someone who's slick, can jab, move or whatever. But actually, if you go back and watch quite a few of his fights, even the more recent ones, like Otto Wallen, for example, there's a lot of brawling in there. There's a lot of, he knows how to get down and dirty when he needs to. So what do you make of that? Do you think it's underrated or?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about sort of inside of the ring, adaptation during the fight, he's not on the level of, say, a Mayweather or an Andre Ward, but with that goes without saying, whoever can switch between orthodox and southpaw within a fight, I mean, credit's got to be given there. I'd more say fight prep and the game plan that he sets out beforehand is where credit is due. Like we've mentioned, we've touched on it before with the Wilder 1 and the Wilder 2, the difference there, putting on the more weight, having the more power with the right hand. And he was the first person to sort of lay out the blueprint of how Wilder can be beaten. He said, this guy can't fight backwards, take the fight to him and end it soon. And he said it in the press conferences before and said, I'm going to knock him out. I've changed my trainer. We've got a new plan. And everyone just sort of thought it was Fury trash talking, but he really did deliver. And like you said, you've seen him in other fights before where he's able to adapt to his opponent. And when he fought Tom Schwartz, I know he's a bit of a bum, but the way he was slipping punches there was just phenomenal. So I do definitely rate it highly, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so to wrap it up for everyone now, let's go to a classic question, something about Tyson Fury. And what is your favorite fight, your favorite ever Tyson Fury fight? And I'll kick it off, then we'll move to Johan, Jim, and then finally Joe. And for me, my favorite fight, it's a bit of a spanner in the works and not one probably people are expecting, but I've gone for Otto Wallen because for me, I like to see fighters when they're in deep waters. I don't really enjoy fights I didn't particularly enjoy Tyson Fury's first fight against Wilder for much of the fight. I didn't think it was, Fury looked pretty comfortable throughout the whole fight. You know, against Schwartz, we saw that him pretty comfortable and whatever. But for me, it was the Otto Wallen fight when it was like you had someone in Wallen who there was no expectations for him. Fury clearly wasn't expecting this guy to come out of the blocks the way he did. And he came to fight and, got the cut in early with Tyson Fury. And Fury had to fight through every round, blood in his eye, work for that win. But ultimately, as that, he's got that champion mentality and he showed that I will find a way to win whatever means possible. If it means I'm going to do it behind the jab or if it means I'm going to go toe to toe with this guy people didn't really know anything about. There was no fight footage of him or whatever. You couldn't really study this fighter. But I really enjoyed that fight from Tyson Fury.
Yeah, especially as he continued to fight on the front foot, even with that massive gash above his eye. That shows the heart of the lion.
What people don't really remember with Tyson Fury is actually, if you go back to some of his older fights, that's how he actually used to fight. He used to, even though he used to tower over fighters, he used to go glove to glove, head to head, and just brawl with people. And it was ridiculous. You thought this man is towering over them. And it wasn't actually after a few, fights like against Steve Cunningham, an example like that, where, he felt the power.
The Steve Cunningham fight is a good example of where Fury is weak because he loves to get into a scrap. And who wouldn't if you were that size? But I don't think he fights at his best like that. Yeah. And I think he gets exposed. I mean, because he's been exposed by fighters that aren't of a particularly high caliber when he's fought like that.
Sure. Let's hear your favorite Tyson Fury fight.
Who have we gone to?
To you.
To me.
Your favorite Tyson Fury fight, yeah.
Easily. Wilder 2, because fuck my life. What a fight. I mean, he was a monster. Absolute monster. Wasn't expecting that. Love that fight. That's definitely my favourite fight. Don't think it will be beaten either.
Yeah, that was just insane. Seeing him come out like a horse bolting out of the stable.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't talk about Tyson Fury without talking about those Wilder fights. But over to you, Jim. Your favourite Tyson Fury fight?
I think for the sheer shock value, it's got to be his victory over Klitschko. Everyone loves the story of the underdog, and going to Germany, undefeated in 9 years, beating Klitschko in his own backyard, and to top it off, singing Aerosmith. that will stay with me forever.
Yeah. If you want to rub salt in someone's wounds after just schooling them for 12 rounds and then seeing Aerosmith to your wife in front of them, that is class from Tyson Fury.
So
Joe, to wrap it off.
Yep. Controversial one. I'm going to go with Fury Chisora 1. Great brawl. It's one of those fights. I know you didn't like it, Mike, but he was in complete control. I mean, with Chisora, I'd seen more head movement come out of Mount Rushmore than fucking Derek Chisora. His face was swollen like a bee had stung him, but it was brilliant to watch. And I think they pulled him out in a sort of fight. I love it. So that's my favourite Fury fight.
Need to throw Ruiz in there too.
Well, what's funny is even after all those years, if Chisora probably fought Fury now, he'd probably give him a lot better fight now after, the time he spent with David Haye. Well, God knows what he's been doing with him. But anyway, that wraps up our first kind of podcast on a specific fighter, on Tyson Fury. We all love him. What a fighter. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Do you guys want to say goodbye?
Yep. Ta-da.
Because even when I dream of you, the sweetest dream will never do. I still miss you.
So thank you, everyone, for listening, and goodbye.